What's good, YouTube and Twitch? We're live to just Twitch with a discussion for you guys, and I'm gonna do the Simu. I'm gonna talk 10 plus minutes about a single card I'm very passionate about in today's metagame, and that's Eater of Millions. This card has a wall of text and is highly underestimated within this metagame. A ton of Grid Module decks are cutting this card, and that's because they're playing dangerous, so they can go very far through their extra deck and don't necessarily want to give up that resource. But I'm here to tell you that it has won me so many freaking games, has so much armor, almost plot armor within this metagame of side decks, and I want to go through its effect and how it applies to today's metagame in such an amazing way. This card cannot be summoned, normal summoned, or set. This card must be special summoned from your hand by banishing 5 or more cards from your hand, field, and or extra deck face down. So you can actually extend a pass and use extra resources to boost its attack on the next effect. This card gains 100 attack and defense for each face down banished card. This includes Pot of Desires that your opponent may be activating, or their Pot of Extravagance and their Gizmek Orochi. In today's metagame, you are getting more and more buff stats from your own deck and your opponent's deck than ever before, where I'm summoning Eater of Millions consistently in the 3,000 to 4,000 attack range. It's ridiculous. It's almost a second attack win condition among Grid Module, but it gets way better than this. This was meant to originally, I think, to be a restriction. This card cannot be tributed nor used as a material for a fusion, synchro, or XC summon. So in the link era, you can use it to link up, but your opponent not being able to fusion summon and or tribute it is very important later in this discussion. Once per turn at the start of the damage step, so after, impermanence and all that can be activated, they have to decide maybe on the attack, and this often draws the impermanence away from the module. If this card battles an opponent's monster, you can banish that opponent's monster face down, thus giving it another 100 attack. But the big part of this is it is non-targeting, non-destruction removal. Yes, it is dependent on the battle phase, so getting there can be rough through floodgates in the current metagame, but within Danger Grid Module, you have so many resources to force cards earlier, and then use this card to boost up your Grid Module. That's up to a 6,500 attack Grid Module just off this card, banishing your extra deck alone. And there's been times where I've actually missed it, where I could have banished cards from hands, boosting Module even further to game-winning damage, and I leave the opponent alive for an extra turn that I shouldn't. So let's talk about that effect that I was saying earlier, the restrictive effect that has become beneficial. Well, this card cannot be tributed is the first part of this restriction, and there's a huge card within the metagame that punishes you for overextending, and that's Nibiru. But how Nibiru works is you can tribute as many face-up monsters on the field as possible. This having the effect of not being tributed actually works more like a floodgate effect to Nibiru in this situation, where Nibiru will nuke the board except for Eater of Millions. This means you can extend to a point where you can say, all right, I'm fine dealing with Nibiru if I have this card. You're going to get that token left over. They're not going to have Nibiru left anymore for that destruction, because this is then going to go to battle phase and deal with Nibiru if you don't have further extenders where they've already tried to hit you with their Rocky Boy. Not being tributed is so huge when almost everyone is deciding even on adding Nibiru to the main deck or side decking it for decks that want to summon a ton. And what does Grid Module Danger do? It puts a lot of bodies on board fast. So having a body that actually can't be slapped by Nibiru and takes care of Nibiru in the battle phase, that's freaking nice to have. Now, the other card heavily within the metagame that this restriction helps with is Super Polymerization, the most selling card from Duel Devastator. This card fusion summons with the opponent's cards, yet so many people try to activate this on Dueling Book on Eater of Millions when they just freaking can't. This card is a dark, so they want to be using it to go into Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, a card that many people using Super Polymerization are going to use, yet this restrictive phrase stops them from being able to Super Poly it. It's actually becoming an advantage at this point where you can decide, okay, I'm going to link summon up, which I'll get into example of where this is good soon, but they actually just can't use the resource as they want to, and many duelists in their planning and in their turn failed to actually get to use this against me because they plan to use that Eater, not reading that wall of text, and they just die to Eater of Millions this way. So maybe if your duelist that has struggled with the Eater of Millions, consider that a little bit as well. Now, we've mentioned it can easily get Grin Maju up to 6,500. It can take care of some problem cards. We'll get into more of those problems in a bit. What's the advantage of being able to link summon this? Well, in Grin Maju decks, a lot of them are running Hey Trunade, which deals with face downs, but if they flip something up in response, it stays, such as Pesky Floodgates. Oh, these both happen to be fiends. How unfortunate. Well, being able to link summon, since this wall of text was meant before the Link era and ends at Xyz, you can actually go into just Link Rebo, which is a Cyverse, which most of the Danger Grin Maju decks don't bother to play anything that is a Cyverse within the deck that they're going to be summoning on the field, and you can just link away into this and then summon your Grin Maju, perhaps even forcing some back row along the way where they think this is a threat. It's really nice, but you've already got rid of everything else besides what they're flipping up in the scenario, so you're basically going through for free and getting to that point while banishing from the extra deck and still powering it up. Tikaboo is probably one of the most restricted floodgates of the format, and having a play straight through this when you have back row removal, it's freaking nice. Now, if both are on the board, obviously, most of the time you're leaving the Maju. Another nice thing about this removal effect is that, like I mentioned, it's non-destruction. A lot of people are going into Masquerena and trying to go for an Avermax, which is a huge problem for most cards, but not Eater of Millions. Actually, Eater of Millions dances around every effect of Avermax when we read it, even when powered up by IP Masquerena. Let's go through it. Once per battle, during damage calculation, this card battles a special summon monster. Quick effect, you can make this card gain attack. Well, that's irrelevant because at the start of damage, it's going to banish Avermax face down. Also, while this link summon card is on the field, your opponent cannot target this card with card effects. The effect of Eater's non-targeting. Also, their monsters cannot target monsters for attacks except this one. Again, no problem for Eater. Eater, going in, attacking. Now, if this gets impermanenced, a little bit of a problem. If it's Veilered, though, it's before the battle phase where you're not going to risk this at all. But yeah, just like Grin Maju, this can really fall to imperm, but it also draws the imperms early on too, is the advantage. Next up, a deck I played a lot, Thunder. Eater of Millions really pushes Thunder Dragon Colossus to its limits because it's just going to banish it face down. This has Destruction protection. It doesn't have Eater protection. Similarly, I've made Blackluster Soldier of Chaos against so many decks where they can do nothing. Against Sky Strikers, they really struggle against this at times because they cannot target it with card effects, period. That includes Widow Anchor. It's not opponent's monsters. It's your opponent cannot target. Also, it cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects, period. So Eater just eats through this armor. It doesn't care about it, and it just goes in, taking care of another problem card that many decks, such as Magical Muskets or Sky Strikers, decks within the format and current metagame, actually struggle with this effect, yet Eater doesn't. So when I look at this, and I see the Danger Maju deck, I wonder sincerely how so many people have cut this when it steals game after game after game for me within the metagame, has so much resistance, but I do get it. You want access to your extra deck, your Danger Boys. You want to be able to link up with them continuously and not eat your extra deck. I think personally the cost is worth it. Catching people off guard against these techs that are consistently through the format is worth it, and I am going to continue to play Eater of Millions myself. But what do you guys think about Eater of Millions in the comment section down below? In chat, I'm sure you all have been popping off. What do you all have to say about Masquerena? Oh man, seriously, I think the Eater of Millions is so underestimated, and you shouldn't be just shrugging it off. You should test with this, see what it's doing against a lot of matchups. I think there are points where it will struggle, such as against Salomon Greats, where they have the ability to counter trap or pop it, and that's pretty persistent within the metagame. But I sincerely think against Orcust and Dengirsu, for another example, it bypasses Dengirsu protection armor. It does so much against so many decks within the current metagame that I think it's something that should be a mandatory card almost in Maju. But again, I get your access to the extra deck is so important. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy these live raw discussions, unedited for you guys with Twitch chat. They really like it. What about Crescendo? I know, it hurts. Crescendo hurts. Any negation is going to end up hurting Eater, but there's so many times against stun decks where I draw their Solemn Judgments and clear the way for Maju, already hurting their life point. So like, I think Eater has the ability to draw things in, but yeah, it's got its weaknesses too. I would understand. It takes some like skill to play through and be like, Is that an impermanence? I need to deal with that back row. Do I not need to deal with that back row? That's why they try to get the blanketing cards that take care of back row. But I still think that in combination, when you have like desires plus this, the Majus are just so big instantly that it's insane. It's awesome. Your Maju's already where you want it to be, and I don't think you should be letting go of that resource. But again, thank you live chat for joining me for this discussion. Be sure to make these Twitch streams over on Zodiac Duelist TV and sometimes live on House of Champs. That is Friday 7 Central, Sunday 7 Central, and sometimes like today, Wednesday 7 Central, if you want to catch these and be a part of these videos with chat popping off down below. Thanks for watching, everybody.